AITA for blocking my ex after rehab. I never thought I'd end up the kind of person who looks over their shoulder at the grocery store. But here I am. And it all started with one decision: to protect my son from a man I used to love. His name is Jonah, and if you'd met him 12 years ago, you'd understand why I fell for him. He was warm, charming in this quiet way, and knew how to make people feel safe. That's the part that really got me. He made me feel like nothing could hurt me. But I was wrong. And when it all came crashing down, it happened fast. Suddenly, we met at a bookstore when I was 22. I was working part-time while finishing school, and he was the guy in the music section who always smelled like cedarwood and coffee. I wasn't looking for love, but without warning, there he was. The kind of person who asks how your day is and actually listens to the answer. We started talking, then seeing each other more, and eventually, we moved in together. It was simple in the beginning. Late nights watching movies on the couch, pancakes at 2 a.m., road trips where we didn't care about the destination. It felt easy. It felt safe. But something fell off after the second year. He lost his job, said it wasn't his fault. I believed him. He stayed home more, drank a little more. I cleaned up the dishes, covered the rent, smiled when people asked how we were doing. But it didn't make sense. The way he kept promising he'd change, but never did. I should have walked away, but I didn't. Instead, I stayed through 3 job losses, 1 broken lease, and a night I'll never forget. The night I found my grandmother's necklace missing. He said it must have fallen behind the dresser. But I knew. I didn't ask. I just packed my bags and left. I thought that would be the end of the story. I really did. But it was only the beginning. Years passed. I met someone new. Mateo. Solid, quiet, kind in the way that doesn't need attention. He didn't talk about what he'd do. He just did it. I got pregnant 2 years into our relationship. Riley was born early, and he was small, fragile. I stayed awake for nights listening to his breathing, making sure nothing went wrong. Mateo never left my side. We became a family, a real one. And then silence. 3 months ago, a familiar face showed up at the school where I teach 2nd grade. Jonah. I hadn't seen him in 5 years. He was thinner, paler, eyes sunken, like someone who hadn't truly slept in years. But he smiled, said he was clean, said he was better, and that he'd heard I had a child. There was no explanation for how he found out. No one was supposed to know. He said he wanted to meet Riley, said he needed to know him, that it would help keep him on track. He used those exact words. I said no. I said, calmly, that this child wasn't his. And more than that, he wasn't someone Riley needed. He looked at me like I'd just hit him, like he expected me to say yes. I walked away, but it wasn't over. There was a knock on our door 4 days later. A letter from Jonah. He'd found our address. Again, no one was supposed to know. The letter was handwritten, messy, full of spelling mistakes and crossed out words. He said he was lonely, that he thinks about what life might have been like, that he didn't want to be forgotten. And then silence until the next knock. It wasn't Jonah this time. It was his sister, holding a pie. Yes, a pie. She said she wanted to talk. I let her in, not thinking. That was a mistake. She called me cruel, said Jonah's trying, that I should at least give him a moment. I should have walked away. Instead, I told her everything, that Riley wasn't his, that he didn't get to show up and demand a family. She left angry. I thought that was the end of it, but it was already too late. The next day, I got an email from an account I didn't recognize. Attached was a document titled Petition for Visitation Rights. My heart dropped. There was no explanation. He had filed to see Riley, said he was the presumed father. But the twist? He claimed we were never divorced. It didn't make sense, because we were never married. I read that line over and over again. Then I flipped to the back page. A forged marriage certificate. My name, his name, a fake judge's signature. I stared at it until the words blurred. What I saw next still haunts me. Photos, screenshots of Riley from my private Facebook. Pictures I never posted publicly. Him at the park. Him at his birthday. I called Mateo in a panic. He told me to breathe, but I couldn't. I just kept whispering. Something fell off. Something fell off. We contacted a lawyer. He looked through everything and said it was clearly forged, but the process to stop it would still take time. And then silence for 2 weeks until Jonah showed up again. Outside our house, Riley was playing in the front yard. Mateo had just stepped inside for a second. Jonah didn't come to the door. He crouched on the grass, talking to Riley like he knew him. I wasn't supposed to be there, but I had come home early. I pulled into the driveway and saw it happening. My heart dropped. I screamed. Mateo ran out. Jonah stood up and raised his hands like he didn't mean anything by it. I called the police. He left before they arrived. A week later, I got a final letter. No threats this time. Just one line. You can't hide him from me forever. I should have walked away when I saw him at the school, but I didn't. And now, I don't sleep well. I've changed our routines. I look out the window more. I've filed for a restraining order. The forged documents were thrown out in court. Our lawyer said the judge saw right through them. So I ask again, AITA for not letting my ex, who says he's changed, ever see the son he never had?
Update 1.
It's been 3 weeks since the court threw out Jonah's forged petition. On paper, the issue was over. Judges signed off. Our lawyer told told us we were in the clear, and I was supposed to feel relief. I didn't. For a moment, it did feel like life was beginning to return to normal. Riley had been sleeping through the night again. The bags under Mateo's eyes were fading, and I even found myself humming while packing Riley's lunch. It felt good to breathe without looking over my shoulder, but the illusion didn't last. Suddenly, during dinner on a quiet Wednesday evening, Riley dropped his fork. He looked past me toward the living room window, pointed with his tiny hand, and said softly, "That's the man from the grass." My body went still. The fork in my hand slipped and clattered to the floor. I turned around, slow and heavy, like my limbs didn't belong to me. I walked toward the window, half expecting to see no one, hoping it was just a trick of a toddler's imagination. And then silence. The street outside was still, empty, no headlights, no footsteps, just the faint glow of the neighbor's porch light. But something felt off. Riley doesn't make things up. He's too young to lie. His face, when he said it, he looked confused, not scared, just confused, like he wasn't sure if what he saw was real. That night, after I put Riley to bed, I couldn't sleep. Mateo was still on shift at the hospital, and the silence in the house pressed against my chest like a weight. I left all the lights off. I sat by the front window with the curtain barely pulled back. I waited. I don't know what I was expecting. And then, just before midnight, I heard it again. The low hum of a car engine. Headlights. Then darkness. The engine cut off. I peeked through the curtain and saw it. A dark sedan across the street. The windows were tinted. No one got out. No one moved. There was no explanation. I called Mateo first. His voice was groggy. He must have found a moment to sleep. When I told him what I saw, he said, "Lock the doors. Call the police. I'm leaving now." I hung up and did what he said. I called the police. They arrived 14 minutes later. The car was gone. They took my statement, gave me a number to call if anything else happened. One officer asked gently, "Are you sure this isn't someone just lost?" But I knew. No one was supposed to know where we lived. The address wasn't public. We hadn't shared it with anyone outside of family and close friends. It didn't make sense. I stayed by the window until sunrise. Mateo came home and found me still there, wrapped in a blanket, eyes burning. He said nothing, just sat beside me and took my hand. That morning, we checked the home security footage. But here's the thing. We found something we didn't expect. The camera feed between 10:55 p.m. and 11:12 p.m. had been corrupted, glitched. The footage skipped entirely over the time the sedan was parked. My heart dropped. Mateo stared at the screen, silent. Then he said, "That's not a coincidence. We upgraded our cameras that day. I ordered a new doorbell cam, motion lights, even sensors for the backyard." But later that evening, while Mateo gave Riley a bath, I noticed something else. There were small prints in the dirt by the side gate. They were boot prints, leading in but not out. Suddenly, I remembered something from the week before. Riley's blue rain boots, the ones he loved to wear even on sunny days, had gone missing from the back porch. I had assumed he brought them inside and lost them somewhere. But they weren't in the house. They weren't in the closet. They weren't anywhere. What I saw next still haunts me. The next day, taped to the mailbox, was one of Riley's drawings. It was crumpled, like it had been handled too many times. Riley's name was scribbled on the corner in his careful toddler handwriting. But underneath it, another line had been written, with adult handwriting, in a sharp black pen. I saw him smile today. We hadn't told Riley about Jonah. He doesn't know who he is. He wouldn't recognize him. But someone had been watching, long enough to know when my child smiles. I should have walked away from the window, but I didn't. 2 days later, I went to pick Riley up from daycare. When I got there, the teacher said he had already been picked up. She said, "Didn't your husband come earlier today?" My vision went black. I couldn't breathe. I said, "That wasn't my husband." It was already too late. I ran outside, dialing Mateo, dialing the police, my hands shaking so badly I dropped the phone. 1,000 thoughts flooded my head. There was no explanation. There was no way. How did he know the daycare location? How could this be happening? Until suddenly a van pulled into the lot. Riley stepped out, holding a daycare staff member's hand. She looked confused, apologetic. "Sorry, we thought he was with the man from earlier." But then Riley got scared and started crying. So we stopped him before he got far. They hadn't let him go, but someone had tried. He had come that close. I wasn't supposed to be there early that day, but thank God I was. We filed another police report. This time, they took us seriously. They stationed a cruiser outside our house for a few days. The daycare upgraded their protocols, but none of that gave me peace. The man in the car, the corrupted footage, the boots, the drawing, the daycare. No one was supposed to know, and yet he did. We decided that night to put the house up for sale. We'd leave the city, change our names if we had to, because now I know he won't stop, not until he gets what he thinks belongs to him. And I'll do whatever it takes, to keep my son safe, even if that means watching every car, even if that means never sleeping through the night again, even if that means becoming someone I never planned to be, someone always ready, someone never caught off guard, someone who, from now on, never walks away.
Update 2.
2 days ago started like any other morning. Riley woke up early, babbling for breakfast and cartoons, while Mateo brewed coffee in the kitchen. I was still rubbing sleep from my eyes when Riley toddled up to me holding something small, soft, and familiar, a tiny stuffed fox, well-loved and a little ragged at the seams. "It was in the mailbox," he said simply. I froze. I took the fox gently, feeling the fabric worn thin from years of hugs. But the words hit me harder than I expected. We hadn't put that toy anywhere near the mailbox. Not even close. Mateo looked up from his coffee, confused. "The mailbox? How did it get there?" We didn't have an answer. Suddenly, a chill ran down my spine. We both looked at each other, understanding the unspoken truth. Someone had been outside the house, close enough to leave something in our mailbox. I called Mateo to help search the house, room by room, every drawer, every closet. We looked for anything missing. Nothing. All the windows and doors were locked tight. The security cameras had recorded no movement during the night. But then, we checked the mailbox again. Taped to the inside was a folded note. The paper creased and wrinkled like it had been carried in a pocket too long. I unfolded it carefully, my hands trembling as I read the shaky handwriting. "He liked foxes when he was little, remember?" The word stabbed at me. It didn't make sense. Riley was 2 years old. Jonah had never been part of our lives after I left. He didn't know Riley, had never even touched him. There was no way he could have known something so small and personal, unless he'd been watching. The thought sent waves of cold fear through me. No one was supposed to know these details about us. The realization felt like a punch to the gut. How had Jonah found out where we lived? How long had he been observing our lives from the shadows? I took the note straight to our lawyer. We sent a copy along with an updated restraining order request. The police increased patrols around our neighborhood. They assured me they were taking it seriously, but the fear didn't leave. Every time the dog barked at the window, my heart dropped. Every unexpected creak of the floorboard sent chills down my spine. I wasn't paranoid. I was protecting my family. And still, something felt off. A few nights later, Mateo and I were watching television when we heard a faint sound outside, soft, deliberate tapping, and then silence. I glanced out the window. There was no one in sight, only the streetlight casting long shadows. When I checked the door, I found another note pinned under the mat this time. It said simply, "I'm closer than you think." My mind raced. Was Jonah getting bolder? Was this a warning? Or worse, was it a promise? That same night, I noticed Riley's favorite blanket missing from his crib. We searched everywhere, but it was gone, vanished without a trace. The next day, Mateo found muddy footprints near the side gate. They were fresh, large, not from any neighbor's dog. I realized then, this wasn't just stalking anymore. Jonah wasn't just watching. He was finding ways to get inside our life. One evening, when Mateo was at work, I heard something at the front door. There was a knock so soft, I almost didn't hear it. I peeked through the peephole. No one was there, but taped to the door was a small, torn piece of Riley's drawing. One he had scribbled at daycare just days before. My breath caught. What I saw next still haunts me. The edges of the paper had tiny fingerprints, too small to be adult, too deliberate to be a coincidence. I called Mateo, voice shaking. He told me to call the police again, to tell them everything. But it felt like we were chasing shadows. And then, without warning, the power in the house flickered twice and went out. Pitch black. I heard Riley start crying from his room. I grabbed my phone, but no signal. I fumbled my way to the nursery, heart pounding. Mateo was on his way home, but it would be at least 30 minutes. I held Riley tight, whispering to him, trying to stay calm. And then, silence. I listened closely, and I heard it again. A faint tapping on the window. I whispered to myself, I should have walked away. But I didn't, because I knew this was no accident. This was a message. A promise that Jonah was coming back, closer than ever. And this time, there would be no running away.
Update 3.
Yesterday started like any other day, but by the time it ended, nothing would ever feel the same again. I woke up with a pounding headache and a heaviness in my chest that I couldn't shake. Fatigue weighed me down like a thick fog. I felt fragile, worn out from nights filled with broken sleep and restless worry. I didn't tell Mateo. I didn't want to burden him on his already long work days at the hospital. I didn't call a friend. I just left work early, hoping to rest in the quiet of home. Pulling into the driveway, I saw it immediately. The back gate was wide open. I wasn't supposed to be there. The gate was supposed to be locked. The security cameras were supposed to alert us the moment it opened, but there was no alert. No warning. I sat in the car for a moment, heart racing, trying to convince myself it was nothing. Maybe I forgot to latch the gate properly this morning. Maybe it was the wind, but I knew the truth. I grabbed my keys tightly. My hands were trembling, like I wasn't fully in control of my body. I stepped out of the car slowly, feeling the gravel crunch beneath my feet. My legs shook, but I forced myself forward, hugging the fence line toward the backyard. And then silence. The kind of silence that presses on your eardrums and makes your your heart feel like it might stop altogether. Suddenly, I heard it, a faint rustle near the shed. I froze, breath shallow, every muscle tense. I rounded the corner of the house, and there he was, Jonah, standing there, holding one of Riley's drawings, a colorful scrawl of stick figures, and a sun. The edges were torn, like it had been ripped from Riley's favorite coloring book. He looked up as I screamed, a raw, terrified sound I didn't even realize I was making until it echoed off the walls of the backyard. His face was calm, almost confused, like I was the intruder, like he didn't belong there. I ran. I sprinted back to the front yard, heart hammering, lungs burning. I locked myself in the car and called 911 with shaking fingers. Jonah fled before the police arrived. The officers took my statement, spoke in low voices, and promised they would issue another warrant for his arrest. But I know how this plays out. It's always the same. We're a step behind. They catch him a little too late, and then he's out again. Because no matter how many times the law tries to protect us, he slips through. That night, I changed every lock in the house, deadbolts, chains, keypad codes, anything that could keep him out. Mateo set up an alarm system that would call the police the moment the gate or any door opened. Still, sleep refuses to come. Last night, I woke up to the sound of footsteps on the porch, and then silence. I lay frozen, heart pounding so loud I thought it might wake Mateo. When I peeked out the window, there was nothing but the shadows of swaying tree branches. But something had been there. Something was watching. I started replaying the moments before I saw him in the backyard. The open gate, the silent footsteps, the torn drawing in his hands. And then I remembered the security cameras that were supposed to catch everything. They were missing. Someone had stolen the outdoor cameras the day before. I hadn't noticed until just now. No one was supposed to know where the cameras were. There was no explanation for how they disappeared without a trace. It didn't make sense. I called Mateo in a panic. He rushed home early, his face grim. We realized then that Jonah isn't just stalking us from a distance. He's breaking in, finding ways inside. And now, he's removing every layer of protection we put in place. I lie awake at night, clutching Riley close, whispering promises I hope I can keep. I should have walked away from the window that night I saw him watching. I wasn't supposed to be there to catch him, but I was. And now, there's no turning back. Because Jonah knows we're afraid, and he's coming for what he believes is his, no matter what it takes.
You are not the AITA. This isn't about holding a grudge, it's about protecting your child from a proven danger. Jonah isn't a reformed ex trying to reconnect. He's a manipulative stalker with forged documents, boundary violations, and escalating behavior that clearly crosses into criminal. This isn't redemption, it's obsession, dressed in nostalgia. He had no role in raising Riley, no legal claim, and certainly no moral right to force himself into a child's life he never knew. My suggestion, never look back. Change your names if you must. Jonah's not trying to heal. He's trying to control the one thing he still thinks he can. You keep choosing safety over sympathy. If anyone calls you cruel again, hand them the forged marriage certificate and tell them this is who you're defending. Honestly, if a man who once stole your grandmother's necklace is now sending cryptic notes and stuffed animals like a low-budget horror villain, you're not withholding a relationship. You're blocking a potential headline. Stay safe, stay firm, and absolutely, unequivocally, you are not the AITA. Before we jump into the next story, don't forget to like and subscribe and let us know your favorite part in the comments.
Story 2.
AITA for wanting to walk away from my marriage after everything changed. When I married Elias, I didn't expect life to become easier, but I never imagined it would become this quiet, this cold. We've been married just under 3 years. No children. No shared dreams anymore. Just long pauses and quiet glances across a room that used to feel warmer. We met through my neighbor, Kira. Elias was charming in a way that made you believe you could trust him. Not loud or flashy, just consistent. Calm. I liked that. I needed that. My parents were practical people, builders, not dreamers. They taught me to value patience and loyalty. Elias seemed like someone who believed in both. Our engagement was short, just 4 months. He moved into my small townhouse after the wedding. I gave up the lease on my own apartment, the one I'd lived in for years. That place had sunlight in every room. I loved waking up to it, but I let it go. At first, I thought we were just adjusting. Everyone says the first year is hard, but the silence began early. Elias would mention how tired he was. I assumed it was work. He'd leave his shoes in the hallway, his coat on the kitchen chair. Nothing big, but I started feeling invisible. I'd cook dinner. He'd eat it, thank me, and then disappear into his office until midnight. He never raised his voice. He never cheated, at least not in the traditional sense. But slowly, I felt erased, like I didn't exist beyond my usefulness. I brought it up once. We were doing the dishes. I asked, "Do you even enjoy being married to me?" He dried his hands and said, "Don't start." That was it. No answer. No follow-up. Just that. I never asked again. One night, I had to stay late at work. When I got home, the front door was locked from the inside. I knocked, thinking he'd just fallen asleep. But when he opened the door, he looked surprised to see me. His sister, Nadia, was there. She was in the kitchen, pouring wine. She smiled too much. Elias told me it was just a visit. Nadia had shown up unannounced, but she never stayed this late before. She left 5 minutes after I arrived. A week later, she texted me by accident. It was meant for Elias. It said, "You should have just told her. This is getting messy." When I asked him about it, he said it was about a surprise birthday dinner. My birthday was 4 months away. From then on, my trust cracked quietly. I didn't accuse him of anything. I just watched. He began disappearing for entire weekends. Work retreat, conference, client visit, always vague, always last minute. I started sleeping with the hallway light on. I didn't know why. Maybe I just needed to feel less alone in my own home. Then came the accident. I was rear-ended on the freeway. Nothing major. Bruised ribs, minor concussion. I called Elias from the hospital. No answer. I texted him. Nothing. I had to call Kira to come pick me up. She stayed the night with me. The next morning, Elias walked in like nothing had happened. "Your phone died." I asked him. He looked at me, almost annoyed. I had to unplug it. It kept buzzing. I was trying to sleep. He never asked how I was feeling. I started thinking about divorce after that, but not because of what he did, because of how it made me feel. Like I was an inconvenience in my own life. Like I didn't matter unless I was useful. But it's complicated. His name is on the mortgage. We refinanced the house last year. My name is on the loan, but he controls the payments. I don't even know the login. My parents are older, and my brother lives in another state. If I leave, I'll have to start over. Completely. He's still polite, still helpful when he wants to be, but never warm, never present. The man who used to surprise me with takeout on hard days now forgets I exist in the same room. And I still can't prove anything happened with Nadia. Maybe nothing did. Maybe that's the saddest part, that I stayed because I wasn't sure. Now, I'm at a crossroads. I don't hate him, but I can't feel him anymore. And I've stopped trying to make him see me. Is that enough of a reason to leave?
Update 1.
Elias was at the gym, or at least he said he was. It was already past 9 p.m., and I just finished the dishes when I realized my work laptop was almost dead. My charger was in his office. That's what I told myself. That's the only reason I went in. He never locks the door, but he always closes it, and I've always respected that space. It's where he takes calls I'm never told about, where he disappears for hours, where he keeps things tidy, sterile, like a showroom pretending to be personal. I knocked, even though no one was home. Habit, maybe. Then I pushed open the door. The light from the hallway spilled across his desk. His laptop was still on. The screen hadn't gone to sleep, and what I saw on it, I don't know how to explain the feeling. It wasn't fear. It wasn't even shock. It was a kind of stillness that spread through me like I just stepped into water I didn't know was freezing. A chat window was open. One of those clean, white bubbles on a gray background. I didn't recognize the name. Lila C. Not Nadia. Not a work contact. Just a name I'd never seen before. 3 messages. No timestamps. Just sitting there, waiting to be read. She still doesn't know? You promised you'd tell her after New Year. Stop dragging this out. It's not fair to either of us. I didn't touch anything. I didn't scroll. I didn't take a picture. I just stood there, reading those lines over and over like they were written in another language. My brain tried to make it innocent. Maybe it was a joke. Maybe it was about a surprise, a party, a gift, a misunderstanding. But I knew better. I could feel it in my chest, the way your body tells the truth before your mind does. I backed out of the room slowly, closed the door like I was hiding from a crime scene. Then I went downstairs and sat on the edge of the couch, holding my laptop and charger but not plugging them in. I didn't sleep that night. Not really. Just stared at the ceiling and listened to the heater click on and off. When Elias came back, he kissed the top of my head and said, "Sorry I took so long. You okay?" I said I had a headache. He said, "Go rest. I'll make you tea." And I did. I went upstairs. I laid down, and I stared at the wall, wondering who Lila was. But I didn't ask, because I wasn't sure I wanted to know. The next day, I did something I never thought I would. I checked the recycling bin on his computer. I waited until he was in the shower, and I opened the laptop like I'd done it 100 times before. There was one deleted file, a document called apartment_contract_LC Lila C. I opened it. It was a scanned copy of a lease agreement, dated 2 months ago. A small apartment across town, with Elias listed as co-signer. No mention of me. My hands were shaking. I printed a copy, folded it, put it in the bottom of my sock drawer. He's hiding something. He's living 2 lives. That's what I thought. But it gets worse. That night, I got a message request on Facebook from a profile with no picture. Just the name M. The message said, "He did this to me too. Get out while you can. I stared at it for an hour before responding. I said, "Who are you?" No reply. 5 minutes later, the profile was gone. The next morning, Elias seemed nervous. Not guilty, not sad, just off, like he knew something had shifted but didn't know what. He kept asking if I wanted to go out for dinner, if I needed anything, if I was feeling okay. I said I was fine. Later that afternoon, I opened the cabinet where we keep the mail. It's where he stores unopened letters and bills, the ones he says he'll get to. I'd never gone through it before, but today I did. There was a bank statement addressed to Elias, from a bank we don't use. He had another account. I opened it. There were multiple deposits labeled LC Consult. Small amounts, weekly, like a paycheck, except Elias doesn't consult. Not that I know of. He's a project manager at a mid-size firm. That's what I thought. The balance in that account was almost $13,000. I sat on the kitchen floor for over an hour, holding that envelope. Not crying, not angry, just blank. What is he hiding? Who is Lila? Who is M? Why is there a lease? A second account? A trail of secrets, so fragile and yet so deep. That night, Elias made dinner. He laughed at something on the TV. He kissed me before bed, and I just laid there, still, silent. My entire life now feels like a dream I walked into halfway through, a script I was handed with half the pages missing. And I don't know what's real anymore, but I'm starting to think I was never supposed to find out, because now that I have, something tells me he'll do whatever it takes to keep the rest hidden.
You're not the AITA. When love's soundtrack fades into echoes and silence replaces warmth. Walking away isn't surrender, it's self-preservation. Staying just because a mortgage exists or a shared address feels like an anchor only traps you deeper in a story not yours to carry. Secrets buried in dusty boxes aren't just shadows. They're warning signs flashing neon danger. Your marriage feels less like a partnership and more like living with a stranger who's ghosted half his life and worse. Expects you to ignore the skeletons while playing house. Trust doesn't grow in the dark, especially when Lila C. and M. lurk in file folders and chat windows. You're allowed to want more than polite silences, late excuses, and half-truths served cold. This isn't just about infidelity or grief. It's about not being someone's stand-in for a past they refuse to confront. My advice, pack up your dignity, not just your journals. Life's too short to be the nice background character in someone else's rerun. Choose yourself. It's messy, it's hard, but sometimes the bravest thing is walking away from a life that never really included you. So yes, not the AITA. And honestly, it's time to stop being the unpaid audience in Elias's tragic drama. Thanks for watching. Don't forget to like and subscribe. Got a story to share? Drop it in the comments and let us know which one was your favorite. If you enjoyed this video, you'll definitely want to check out AITA for Leaving My Mom's Wedding. Click here to watch it now.